The reason why Disney will never make good Star Wars is because a corporation does not have a soul. That might sound like awfully floaty language, but I mean every word of it, and the idea is equally easily applicable to Amazon and any other mega corporation trying to do something with what was once Geekdom Media. And the reason for all of it is the same one, that they don't have the soul of the thing that they're trying to recreate. And they are physically, emotionally, you might even say, incapable of ever possessing it. Now, of course, yes, soul is a bit of a floaty word to use, but it is the best and only one to describe that intangible something, that spark of recognition and detail that only someone genuinely interested in a setting, in a thing, can spot, can see, and can place there. It is not a question about brute knowledge or of references. Any Hollywood filmmaker can toss in 1,000 obscure references in the background. Oh, hey, over there's a tower that you would know from the cover of book la la la. Or hey, there's an icon that means this and this. That isn't the point. There is a difference between reading something and understanding it. The Rings of Power is a perfect example of this, as the showrunners claim to start every writing session with a Tolkien quote. And yet still, here we have Galadriel, in plate and chain armor, climbing a glacier with a knife. Or perhaps the worst little glimpse of a scene we have seen so far from Rings of Power, Galadriel stacking up the helmets of dead elven soldiers after a battle. It is so macabre, and it is the perfect example of reading but not understanding. Okay, the War of Wrath was horrible, lots of people died, elves died, it was terrible, blasted landscapes, Balrogs fighting armies, oh my god, how do we represent all of this? Oh, I know, a stacked pile of golden helmets! I mean, I admit it makes for a powerful shot, but it is the most un-elven thing you could possibly see. The embodiment of grace and virtue, stacking up the helmets of the slain like goddamn trophies. It makes Galadriel look sinister and callous. Look at her clothing. She's wearing pearly, pristine white whilst going to the battlefield to pick up debris. There's only a tiny bit of ash on the hems of her gown as she places another skull atop the mountain. It is awful. And never even mind the elven part. Never even mind the fact that elves would never treat the gear of their lost comrades like this because it would be sinister. Imagine a soldier doing this, like, oh hey, I'm just gonna take my dead friend's gear and just lump it in a nice on hill over here because, you know, that's how we treat dead people's belongings, right? No, this is what you do to your defeated enemy. And there was a way to make this shot with that soul, with that respect for the characters, for the universe, and for their style. Instead of the mountain of empty tin helmets, a single curved elven sword thrust into the ash, maybe perhaps itself blackened or disfigured with a helmet perched atop it. Perhaps you could then add in Galadriel on her knees next to a hastily and haphazardly created grave, just ash heaped upon ash. Her face dirty after digging through the ground, her clothes equally dirty after helping with the wounded, perhaps little splatters of blood on them, her face streaked with tears through the grime. And there you have an image of elven anguish and elven suffering, instead of a pile of decapitated helmets. But of course, we can't have that, because it's not the cool shot, and it makes the strong female character look weak and vulnerable. We can't have that. Not in a current year TV show, of course. And absolutely, the agenda, as I've talked about previously, is a part of this as well. The fact that a lot of the quote-unquote creators of these shows have their own greater good, something more important to them, which they hold in far greater reverence than some mere geekdom property. This can be seen in, for example, House of the Dragon, where the pale as alabaster silver-haired House Valerian has a black man in it. Not because he was an already existing character or because it made sense, but because the showrunners didn't want another bunch of white people on screen. But again, that is malice, and it cannot be explained by simple ignorance, just racism. And whilst I'm sure there will be plenty of that in the Rings of Power as well, this is a problem that could be solved very easily by hiring a director who, well, wasn't a raging racist. But even if they got such a person, a rarity in today's Hollywood, then there is still no guarantee he would make something that was actually Star Wars or actually Game of Thrones. Hell, sometimes it's not even a guarantee if you get the company that originally invented it to make something, because of the outsider problem. Let me show you something here. This is an abomination. An absolute disgusting insult to everything that is 40k. But in case you are not a 40k fan, this is a Space Marine. They are genetically enhanced super soldiers that are divided into various chapters, who were in turn parts of what were once legions. Now the legions are long gone, but the thing is the legions had their own distinct nature and characteristics. You would never mistake, for example, an Imperial Fist for a Space Wolf. This, incidentally, is supposed to be a Space Wolf. And no, they don't wear furry bait yiff helmets normally. This is the prime example of an outsider coming into a franchise, getting a job in the franchise and going, oh hey, I know what a Space Wolf is. What if we give it a goddamn furry helmet with literal whisker? No, whisker, no, oh god, I hate the whiskers. The whiskers and the ears. Okay. Space wolves. It is not a physical thing. It is a metaphor. It speaks to their behavior, their modus operandi, their personality. They are savage. They are close quarters combat fighters. They are rip and tear combatants. They are space Vikings. They are not this. God. But at the same time, if you were hired by GW, you came from the outside, you don't really give a shit about 40k, you just loved the benefits and the pay package, and you were told, okay, right, so we need a variety pack for the Space Wolves, and they gotta be helmets, okay? Come up with something cool. And you're like, okay, Space Wolves, well, they got lots of furs and stuff, and I mean, they are the Space Wolves, and their icon looks like a wolf, so this god-awful thing was created. This is what happens when a franchise loses its soul, when it itself no longer knows what it is, and there is ample evidence of this in 40k as well. And bear in mind, 40k is still owned by its original creators, Games Workshop, but there has been so many things as of late, like, for example, Games Workshop mistaking an Ultramarine for a Night Lord. Now again, if you don't understand 40k, you wouldn't get this, but for somebody who does, the idea of looking at an Ultramarine and going, 8th Legion, is absurd. Just like an elf, Galadriel, stacking a mountain of helmets is ridiculous on the face of it. It simply isn't done. It is a commonly known taboo, perhaps. It is something that we simply understand on the fundamental level to be wrong, to be against the spirit and the soul of the setting. and when you see it, you know it immediately. Like the scooters, for example, from the Book of Boba Fett. You just know. There was somebody on set banging their head against a wall whilst this was being filmed, but he was too far down on the totem pole to say anything. And the people who made the decisions, again, they were simply incapable of spotting why this was so utterly and obviously ridiculous and wrong on every level. Because they don't understand. They don't get it. They only see the window dressing. They see the surface-most layer. They are the outsiders looking in. Another beautiful example of this can be seen in Kenobi again and again and again and again over the course of that series. But by far the most stark example of this is when Obi-Wan, after being contacted to go look for Leia, of all people, put on his Jedi robes and carry his lightsaber on his belt, which he flashes in full public whilst being hunted by the Empire. That was done because the people making the show didn't think for 2 seconds. They didn't have that innate understanding of the soul of the setting to go, hold on a second, why would a Jedi dress up in his Jedi robes and carry his obvious lightsaber on his belt in the middle of the day? They didn't think. And in a way, again, whilst a lot of this is malice, a lot of it simply also is the inability to understand. The allegory I like to use with this is, if somebody were to tell me about fly fishing, for example, everything that was great about fly fishing, the experience of it, the feel of casting a line, the thrill of getting a bite and hauling up a big fish, etc., with all the passion and love for it that they have, I would simply sit there and nod my head and go, yeah, that sounds wonderful. I too would love to stand up to my waist in ice-cold water for the off chance that one of the stupidest animals ever created on Earth would bite down on my retardedly obvious metal hook. If I were to make a movie about fly fishing, the best you could hope would be that I would Google fly fishing gear and buy that. Then I would stand in the middle of the river looking absolutely miserable as I cast a line out somewhere. Hell, you'd be lucky if I remembered to attach a fly to the line. And in my case, again here, it wouldn't be malice, it would simply be because I don't get it. It's not my thing. And that's fine too. If Star Wars isn't your thing, great. Don't make a Star Wars show. You would think it'd be a simple thing, but, well, here's of course the flip side. When Disney offers you $5 million to shit all over something you don't care about, what possible reason would you have to say no? And tragically, as with so much of these issues, there is no quick fix solution. Beyond continuing to see the shows bomb, being vocal about it, calling out the idiocy, and making sure they all crash and burn. Eventually, even a corporation might learn its lesson and hire someone who actually gives a shit about the thing they're making. Wishful thinking, perhaps, but I've always considered myself a bit of an optimist. Until next time, I've been Arch. Thank you all very much for watching, and I hope to see you all again soon. Have a good day.